Welcome to the Dustin Box Podcast. Today's guest is Pastor Charles Stock. He's the pastor at Life Center in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. If you don't know about this church, you definitely need to look him up. Incredible stuff is happening out there. Just amazing revival. God is doing crazy things out there. And I sat down with Charles after he was out here for to speak at a worship and prayer event actually hosted at the Google headquarters here in the Bay Area. And, had a bunch of questions ready and stuff. And we actually jump in, and I wanted to hear a little bit of his story. And he really just opened up and shared his testimony about how he met God. And it is so encouraging, so incredible. He was looking for God in all sorts of different places, New Age meditation, Buddhism, yoga, crazy stuff that was all like in the 60s, and drug abuse, alcoholism, all sorts of stuff, and how him and his now wife actually meet God, and their lives are totally transformed. So sit back, enjoy. Remember, this is an unedited, unfiltered conversation that we had, and I'm excited to share it with you. So here we go.
Well, you need like a salt lamp in here and some incense, and turn out all the fluorescent, because it's like giving electromagnetic electrosmog to our brains, so we're not quite as brilliant in this room as we would be.
That's right.
If it was more holistically lighted.
Goodness.
Yeah. We could have some candles,
This is awesome. We're with Charles Stock, and this is amazing. So really quick, so you're actually just kind of touching on some hippie sounding stuff, sort of. Yeah. Can you just kind of share just quickly, briefly, kind of like your story? Because like I know you're an author, you're a pastor. The church is Life Center in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and even this morning was really awesome to hear some of the stories of what's going on there. But I just love to hear some of your story a little bit, if that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah?
Sure. Well, I was born in 1950, so
yeah,
it makes it easy to keep track of my age. Simple math.
Simple math.
But so, I grew up in my conscious life was developed in the 50s and 60s, and those were big, times of transition. We lived in the Sierra Nevadas, Northern California, in a resort town. So in addition to our small town, loggers, contractors, there was the tourist industry and a ski resort 20 miles away, further up the mountain. And so it was kind of a paradise for little kids. And I had 4 brothers. We actually had a mountain behind our house, like with forest on it. So
yeah, and you didn't grow up in a Christian home.
No, my parents were cultural, good Americans, and had some like religious background, but they weren't practicing.
Totally.
And so we grew up with kind of "now I lay me down to sleep" kind of.
Nice.
That would be the height of our family prayers. And, but anyway, so I was impacted a lot by that, by what was going on, and but I had a hunger for God. I actually had an encounter with an awareness of beauty sometime when I was probably, I don't know, early teens, like 12, 13. There had been a snowstorm, and it was a pretty big dump, like maybe 15 to 20 inches of fresh snow.
Wow. Yeah.
And then, so we all went to bed. It was snowing, and all the boys, my dad turned this big attic into a dormitory, so we all slept up there like we were in the Army.
That's awesome.
It was cheap,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so I woke up, and the clouds had cleared, and it was a full moon. Mm-hmm. And I got up and I looked out. There was a window at the end of our room, and I got up and I looked out, and all these trees look like candles, and it's bright because of the reflection. And it like took my breath away. It was like this transcendent moment of awe, like something's out there that's making all this happen. And I had a like a primitive, uninformed faith that God existed, because that was sort of the reality. Although, usually I heard the Lord's name in vain. And, but like we talked about Christmas and baby totally. Jesus and Joseph and Mary and the wise men. And I'm not sure if the resurrection or the Easter bunny was the main
focus
at Easter. But awesome. There was, when we'd fill out the forms, Mom, what am I? Are we Catholic or Protestant? Well, we weren't Catholic, so we were Protestant. So I chose Protestant, but I didn't know what it meant.
That's awesome. And then, when you were teenage years, I'm assuming you mentioned like kind of you were like a hippie, like with the Volkswagen bus, the whole deal.
Oh yeah, that was a little later. Yeah, probably went in early adulthood. So fast forward through all my teen years, because it was a resort town. All these like college kids from the Bay Area. The Bay Area kind of fed our town.
Totally.
And so there'd be all these kids from Palo Alto and Alameda and Walnut Creek and San Francisco. My wife's family had a second home there from San Francisco. And so as, the stuff that was going on in the 60s would come up with the summer kids, and college kids. So civil rights stuff, folk music. I got a lot of my early theology came from listening to music, so Bob Dylan and the Beatles and the Beach Boys and Peter, Paul, and Mary earlier than that, kind of informed a worldview.
Yeah.
And but out of it all, I think I was basically optimistic. Like I thought there's got to be something better.
Yeah.
And so that was the setup. And, like by the time I was 14 or 15, I was probably trying to find transcendence in alcohol, So I was a pretty big wreck, like at 15. Like we literally had a scheme. We stole unlimited. We had this racket. We could steal as much alcohol as we could carry. And there was this friend, Brian, his parents lived in the Bay Area, and I don't know why, but they put him up in their cabin to live up there alone, 15 years old, and go to school.
Oh my gosh!
And so all
because a high schooler.
Yeah, all these cases and cases of beer were in that house, that we had taken. I'm sure that statute of limitations is gone. So, but anyway, so I kind of like in the classic alcohol thing hit bottom.
Totally.
When I was about 15 or 16. So then I went on the wagon, hardcore. And I threw myself into study and academics, and I was going to be like, top of my class, and I was pretty close to the top of my class. But then I was going to go to university and find the truth, at the university. So, so in this, I start reading philosophy, and I start reading Eastern philosophies, because it was kind of, there was a blending. There was kind of the whole hip scene. San Francisco City Lights bookstore, Alan Farrell and Getty, and all this stuff would come to me. And I think I was probably still 16, so my being on the wagon didn't last too long. But because you know what, every human's hungry for the infinite. And if I had raised in a family that had clear mission and direction, and maybe we had a family business, and my dad gave me a hammer and it said, "Here, son, let's build houses," I probably wouldn't have gone this way. But I had all this excess time on my hands, so
totally.
Anyway, I ended up. I remember when I was 16, I was in Berkeley at the Model United Nations as a high school kid, and we were representing North Vietnam, which was perfect, and so
awesome.
So we had to study the kind of the radical view, the revolutionary view, and kind of the alternative view, which there is. Different ways you can interpret history.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm wandering Telegraph Avenue during one of the sessions by myself, and I go into this spiritual bookstore, Shambhala bookstore. It might still be there.
Yeah.
And I'm looking, and I'm kind of all this stuff, like magic and other dimensions.
Totally.
And there's a lot of weird stuff in those bookstores.
Yeah.
And things you don't know exist, but maybe you've heard about, and science fiction kind of stuff. But anyway, one book caught my attention. It was LSD, and I'd heard about LSD because we'd have these Stanford students that would come up in the summer, and they were Harvard, Yale, and Stanford were experimenting with LSD. It wasn't illegal until January 1967, I think, was when it was illegal. But so I said, wow, I've heard about this. So I got this little book, and I bought it.
Yeah.
And I read it, and my takeaway on it was, if you got enough pure LSD, you could see God.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, okay, there's the answer.
Yeah.
And now I was on a quest, you know.
Totally.
I'm
to
looking
find the
for
purest
this
LSD.
pure pharmaceutical grade LSD.
Yeah.
And by that following summer, my future brother-in-law, who lived in San Francisco, John, found some good acid. You know, I don't know, it's Osley acid, or it's one of the. It was pretty good. So we had our first acid trip. Went up on a mountaintop on a warm summer night in the Sierras, looking down on the lights of my little mountain town.
Yeah.
And I have this illegal transcendent experience. I'm seeing spinning lights in the sky, and like Ferris wheels of light, and I feel one with the universe, and this is hilarious. I feel like I'm Adam, like I'm the first man.
Totally.
I'm one with everything that is, all that is, all these kind of Buddhist concepts. Yeah. And I think I know everything there is to know, because you have this moment. I'm plugged into the universal intelligence, and so when I come down from this, I'm a missionary. So I bought a sheet of blotter acid. And I didn't become a drug dealer. I became an LSD missionary. And so I have this sheet of blotter acid, and I'm going to my high school with missionary zeal, and I'm looking for people that I think are like looking for answers. I would have, I wish I had knew Jesus then. But so I'd see somebody and go, hey man, and I'm doing the whole thing like, there's so much more to reality.
Yeah.
And so I'd say, here, you take this, and I give them instructions like, find a quiet place, get really peaceful, have some people around you, and you just take this stuff, and it's going to change your life, And so I had a little following. They didn't follow my instructions, they'd like, I'd give it to them in the morning. They would be high by the end of the school day,
totally.
Burning incense with their eyes glazed over, Fortunately, a lot of the teachers were not highly observant, so I didn't go to jail. But after about, maybe 3 weeks or a month of this, I analyzed the results on my converts, and it was totally random. Like a few people that already were looking for something good. They were all peace and love. And the guys that were like maybe a little more violently inclined, a little more aggressive, they got like really wild. Wow. And so I think someone was praying for me because I analyzed, you know what? I think this is just eliminating the barrier between fantasy and reality, so that what your fantasy is now becomes your reality. And I am no expert on this. I was 16 or 17, and this was my analysis. So I thought, well, this isn't worth going to prison for, because I don't even know what I'm doing. So I flushed it all down the toilet. And, and my girlfriend was kind of worried about it, that I was getting too heavily out there, and so I flushed it down the toilet, and then. I thought, okay, well, drugs isn't it, so how do I find the truth? So about this time, I graduated from high school, and I went to UC Berkeley in the fall of 1968. I arrived just in time for Eldridge Cleaver to teach us an experimental sociology class. And the content of the class was, how to shut down the institutions. And it was basically teaching violent revolution. Yeah. And it was allowed but not accredited. It was a non-credit class. Right. It had an X after it, like Sociology 121X or something. And so this protest began like, no, we want credit for it. Yeah. And if you get big enough megaphone, people will listen to you. So pretty soon, Sproul Plaza's got like 1,000 students, 2,000 students in, and they're all chanting, and Eldridge Cleaver's up at the front leading some chants, basically, like really obscene chants, targeted at Ronald Reagan, who was the governor, and we called him Governor Ray Gun, like
right.
like
a Jetsons like Ray Gun.
And all disrespectfully. But I wasn't in that thing. I'm just observing it. This is my first quarter at UC Berkeley. Oh, wow. That and Hare Krishna's dancing in a circle, and this street preacher, which, and they're doing their Hare,
right, exactly.
with the little
symbol,
castanet, finger symbols, and I thought, well, that's different. And then right there on the corner of Telegraph and Bancroft was my first street preacher I ever saw, and it was Hubert Lindsay, and we called him Holy Hubert, and he would be on this little plastic milk carton preaching away at the crowd, and his famous line was, "Bless your dirty little hearts." And his gospel was that you're sinners and you're going to go to hell if you don't meet Jesus. And there was this guy that we called Isaac the Satanist. Like this, this is our 50-year-old memory. So
this is
if anybody's listening to that actually I'm talking about, and I misquote you or misrepresent you, it's just because I'm old now.
You're gonna get an email from someone randomly.
But so as I remember, Isaac the Satanist was this Jewish guy, and he was.
Wait a second.
Yeah,
Isaac the Satanist was a Jewish guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of funny, because Isaac means Yitzhak means laughter,
Yeah.
And he was like this. It was like this comic team,
Yeah.
So Hubert's up there preaching away, and like hellfire brimstone kind of preaching.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's good news, but it was presented as the good news. And Isaac the Satanist, one day, and this is my mental image that's frozen in my mind. One day he's there, and he's got on these tight black leather pants.
Nice.
He's not wearing a shirt. It's a warm day, and he's got curly like a fro, but because curly black hair, and he's wearing a top hat, and he's mocking Hubert. Like whatever Hubert says, he's mocking it. Just like and I was very susceptible to mockery myself. So it's kind of like. And I needed Jesus really bad. But so there I am, and I'm in the front of the crowd, and I'm this dorky 17-year-old freshman, and I'm from this little mountain town, and I'm kind of scared because I'm suddenly thrown into Berkeley, and all that's going on. And Hubert Lindsay turns toward me and points his finger. And he had like a prophetic thing, like he would say things to people, but what he said to me was, and he said, "And look at you. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know why you're here. You don't, and I mean, it was true, but it was so humiliating to me, It didn't encourage me. And I just felt like, man, is it that obvious?
Wow. So he's tapping into that prophetic thing, but
it was at that moment, it wasn't delivered in love. And
the wrong lens.
I just thought, like, I'm getting away from this guy. Like, I'm humiliated. I want to slink away and hide in the crowd. So this is the life, But in the backdrop of this, I'm going to the classes, and there's these kind of big protests going on in Sproul Plaza. And on top of the Student Union building, which was right across from Sproul Hall, there's all these guys up there with cameras. And they're like the FBI.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if they had the NSA then.
Totally.
But, they're recording who's they're trying to keep track of who the radicals are and that kind of thing. And so my older brother was involved in international intelligence during that Vietnam War era, and he would tell me, don't go in those things because, they'll take your picture and it'll reflect on me, kind of, I don't know how that stuff works, but that was this world. And, there were riots that year. I mean, that quarter, there was a big riot. They set a fire, meaning, I don't know who they was, the people that wanted to do it set a fire in Wheeler Auditorium, and they burned this amazing historic auditorium that seated, 1,000 students or something. They burned it, and so it wasn't usable, and that really was shocking to me. Like, wow, good job, radicals! You're making the world better, And at that time, like Maoism was pretty strong in Berkeley. Totally. There was a Maoist bookstore. Mm-hmm. There'd be graffiti on buildings. Political power comes out of the barrel of a gun, and so it's like this circus of ideas, And I'm taking it all in. I'm trying to find the truth, and so I got involved for a while that year in this nonviolent revolutionary group because I figured, being violent's not going to make the world better.
Right.
The SDS and the RSU, they were like competing with each other, like who could be the most intense and destructive. So there were riots in the winter quarter. There was all these different minority groups got together, the Asian Liberation Front, the Latino Liberation Front, the Native American Liberation Front, and just, I don't know who else, Liberation Front, but they banded together, called themselves the Third World Liberation Front, and the deal was they wanted to shut the university down, and I can't remember the cause, but what I observed is they brought in basically goons from who weren't students, like these really big guys with clubs, and they would hit students trying to go to class. And then the police would come, the San Francisco tax squad came, the dogs came, tear gas came. Jeez. So this is my first year at Berkeley. I'm getting tear gassed. My friends are getting shot.
Yeah.
And then
what's crazy, the way you're describing this though right now, I know this sounds, I really actually want to ask you this too, because it actually sounds somewhat like what's going on right now at Berkeley and some of the other universities. Berkeley just had this free speech rally, and I have friends that
it's kind of a not free speech rally, right?
It's exactly what it was. You have the one crowd up there trying to do the free speech rally, and then you have the Antifa and some of the other organizations there. Just just the chaos that seems to be like what you're describing right now.
Yeah,
it just feels weird hearing you describe your experience at Berkeley, and then having watched Facebook Live videos and some of the other content. You know what I mean? At some of these different locations, it sounds like just like what you're describing. Which is crazy.
It was really intense. So our mission, I can't remember the name of our little group, but to be in it, we all had to read the autobiography of Mahatma Gandhi, and we were trying to practice Gandhian principles, and ahimsa, do no harm.
Yeah.
But we did things like the Berkeley Police Department was going to start using surveillance helicopters. Uh-huh. And so we organized this big thing where we bought balloons and filled them with helium, and they flew on 500-foot strings.
Right.
And so we were getting everybody to launch these balloons in the air so that the helicopters couldn't fly. Well, they couldn't.
Oh, they couldn't even fly because of the height of the balloons.
Well, at least that's what we thought. I don't know if this was effective or not. When you're 17 or 18, you're not totally wired. But that was our mission, and so we did that. And Berkeley police decided not to use the helicopters, and I don't think it was because of what we did. I think it was because it was very unpopular.
Yeah.
And at that time, the Berkeley City Council was a little bit more conservative than it is today. And I haven't lived in Berkeley in many years, so I'm no expert on it. But but these things happened in the spring of 1969. So the winter quarter, we had Third World Liberation Front, and I saw people beaten by the revolutionaries. And then I saw students beaten by the police, and then I saw Holy Hubert in there defending the guilty students from the policemen. Which was really touching.
Yeah,
like he was there. Don't beat these students. God loves them, and it's like he's putting his life on the line for these kids who probably mock him. And so that was probably his best witness. Yeah. It was kind of stunning to see that. And he cared about everybody. Even though his communication style was backwoods Alabama, his heart he felt called to reach these poor lost radical students, And so, the spring came, and there was a vacant lot that got turned like in the course of 2 weekends into what was called People's Park.
Yeah.
And I lived 2 blocks away up Haste Street, and I don't know what the other cross street was or that went by it, but I lived up the hill a couple blocks from People's Park. So this fed all my utopian idealism, like, this is awesome. Look at this, look what can happen when people come together. And of course, I didn't know. I mean, like according to David Horowitz, who was part of the Communist Party at that time, this was all paid for, by somebody. Trucks full of sod showed up, and we were really voluntary labor, and we thought, wow, this is awesome, like love and peace is taking over the whole world.
Totally.
And there were like little paths and flowers planted, and there's like these big pots of soup being made, and pretty soon a lot of the drug addicts off of Telegraph Avenue came and hung out up at the park, and they seemed happy up there. I'm not sure why, but and there's music playing and people dancing, and like white people and black people dancing together, and it seemed like, man, look at this, all the healing is happening, and it's so cool. And then, one night in the middle of the night, and of course it was a provocative action to create a reaction. I mean, it was actually strategic because, of course, this belonged to the regents of the University of California. And Ronald Reagan said, well, you can't just take other people's property.
Right.
But this is a power to the people moment, and we're thinking like, but look how beautiful this is.
So it wasn't actually purchased as a park.
No, it was not purchased. It was like the park was like squatters' rights, like here's this.
They just opened lots and people just showed up and started.
Yeah, they were muddy. People parked cars in them because there was a parking problem in Berkeley, and so and you could park your car there, and so the park became this like rallying point, and at 3:00 in the morning, I'm asleep, and I hear outside this crier. He's like Paul Revere, and he's crying, "The pigs are coming! The pigs are coming!" Because we disrespectfully called all the law enforcement officers the pigs, so we're like, what, and like, oh no, they're killing our dream, So pretty soon I'm all emotional, and I come down, and there at 4 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning is a construction crew that's scraping out a border around this park, and they're putting in a chain link fence.
Oh wow!
And it's surrounded by California Highway Patrolmen, state police, basically, and they're all very professional and nice. But now we're crying, and we're like, oh God, this is so terrible, and like, oh man, And so that day at noon, there's this massive rally in Sproul Plaza, and the student body elect, who would be the student body president in the academic year 69-70, is speaking. There's a bunch of speakers, and they're stirring up the crowd, and there's 3,000 people. And he makes a speech, and he stopped in mid-sentence. He said, we ought to just go back and take our park. And there was more written in the speech, but I was there. He stopped. And so everybody went, so now 5,000, 3,000, I don't know how many thousand mad, crazy students are going down Telegraph Avenue.
Oh, wow.
And along the way, they're breaking, plate glass windows owned by family businesses.
Yeah.
And in those years, business people could not get plate glass insurance in Berkeley because
because of the riots.
It'd been broken too many times. Yeah, it was like, and so this big crowd's going down Telegraph Avenue. But I had been there, and I saw the whole thing surrounded by police. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this is bizarre.
Yeah.
So I went. I thought, I think I'm going to be an observer.
Yeah.
Not a participant. Like.
I just want to see what happens.
Someone must have been praying for me
Yeah.
So I went running up through the campus, and I ran through this art building. I think it was Kroger Hall, but I'm not sure the name after 50 years. But at one point, I can look out through this window, and there was a parking lot that had either a soccer field or tennis courts on the top level.
Yeah.
But it's like a multi-level parking structure, and then behind it there's kind of like a courtyard.
Yeah.
And down in the courtyard were National Guardsmen.
Oh,
And
wow.
they were putting on gas masks and fixing bayonets. It was like surreal.
Oh my gosh.
You know, like
Yeah.
this is like all during the Vietnam War era, you know,
Totally.
and stuff. And by the time I get out of that hall, there's a military helicopter flying over, like with loudspeakers, you know,
Yeah.
telling people not to go certain places. So I run up and I run over to where I lived. And actually later that week, Hayes Street was closed for a few days and had concertina barbed wire down the middle of Hayes Street. Like it was like a war zone. And so I come down from up the hill and I get there about the time the crowd makes the turn to come up the street they came up. And the police are there in position, and they start firing tear gas canisters from guns. They're lobbing these tear gas canisters. And some of the people that had more emotion than brains picked up the tear gas canisters with their bare hands, which I think when they're going off, they're around 400 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, my gosh.
So they pick up the tear gas canisters and they throw them back, which is ineffective. But it was pretty weird. And then the police moved down in kind of a formation and beat back the crowd. And by the time I got down, I'm kind of following this. There's like this guy laying in the gutter with his head. He got knocked down and probably cut his head on the sidewalk curb, not the policeman's club, but I'm not sure. So I see this, you know, and the guy's getting up and he's bleeding, and his girlfriend's wrapping like a cloth around his head like he's a Revolutionary War hero. And it was crazy, you know, and there's tear gas in the air and people. And around this time, the Alameda County deputy sheriffs showed up in these baby blue jumpsuits with no numbers and no names and full face masks and shields and clubs and guns, and they hated hippies. A lot of these guys were like ex-military police from Vietnam, and they pulled up in a bus like right up around Haston College, Dwighton College, and they just came running out. Like I'm watching it, to me they seem like wild Indians, you know, like not use a bad picture, but they're like, wow, you know, like with their clubs in the air, and they're running into this crowd. And some forms of tear gas were used that aren't supposed to be used on civilian populations were used. You know, there was ejective vomiting. There was people got these big welts and that would be like military grade gas. And so it was probably an accident. But later there's like a Jeep patrolling, and it's got a tear gas generator on its back, and all these days are blurred. But so now the People's Resistance sets up. There was an FM station in San Francisco, I think KMPX San Francisco, I think, was playing all this like resistance music. So everybody, you know, like in the apartments in the area, people had their speakers in their windows, and you know, and I just remember this surreal thing, and Buffalo Springfield singing, you know, something's happening here, what it is ain't exactly clear. Man with a gun over there telling me I got to beware, and you got to stop now. You know? And it was like, yes, it was just like, man. It was a very surreal time. And so on one of those days, there was a day, and it was toward the end of the school year, it was in May that this all happened, and people are trying to get to class to turn in assignments and, you know, get ready for finals. And so one day I'm trying to go to class, and we go into another plaza. You go through Sather Gate, it's a different plaza. And you get into the plaza to go to the class, but there's like different agencies blocking different routes. So there's like the state police in one place, there's Berkeley police in another place. There's the San Francisco tax squad was there, like riot police came in, and all of them were quite professional, with the exception of the Alameda County deputy sheriffs, and a lot of the policemen were traumatized. I talked to Berkeley policemen.
Yeah,
they were in a car, and I think it was on Telegraph Avenue, but their car was surrounded by a crowd and rocked until it tipped over and gas was pouring out.
Oh wow!
And someone threw a match, and the police pulled a gun to get out of the car.
Yeah,
because otherwise they would have been burned alive. And
wow.
those. I ran into one of those policemen who'd been in the car, and he was pretty jacked up. From trauma. And helicopters are flying around announcing the curfew in different zones, and so this day comes. We're all trying to go to class, and we get trapped in this plaza they didn't have a unified command, so they were all keeping their
own post.
Yeah, like this is I'm like. This is what I was told. You can't come this way.
Yeah.
So now this crowd's like all worked up, and here comes a military helicopter down low and tear gas.
Wow.
Tear gases the whole crowd. I'm in the crowd.
Oh my gosh.
And some of that tear gas blew, to the east because the wind was coming off the bay, and it blew up to Cowell Hospital, and there were some people with respiratory conditions who died.
Wow. And
I got into this building, went down on the lower floor into this it was an old building with this big, huge marble restroom, and I got wet paper towels and just got down on the floor to breathe through the paper towels, because it was kind of like, it's like if you poured hot pepper up your nose and into your lungs. It just burned, and it was there to stop people from doing what they're doing.
Totally.
And so these were traumatic experiences. And so I thought, I'm going to go up to the mountains. Yeah. Am I talking too long?
No, this is fine. This is actually super fascinating to hear.
Okay, Memorial Day weekend, the word was on the street there was going to be a huge confrontation. Because days go by, and it's like a standoff.
Totally.
And, kids that were called up for the National Guard, they don't want to be there.
Yeah.
But they're standing guard with their bayonets. And I remember I had to buy paper. I had to go into the student union store to buy paper so I could finish this term paper, like typewriter paper.
Right.
And I asked this guy, I said, can I go in there? And he goes, yeah, you can go in, but you can't come out. And I felt like, what do I do with that? And I thought, well, I need to go in, so I'm going to go in. So I go in there. I get my paper at the store. And then there's hundreds of students in there, and they're kind of, there's like this craziness. Everybody's got crazy brain, They're like, whoa, what's going on? Well, somebody was smart. They pulled a fire alarm.
Yeah.
And so when the fire alarm's pulled, it's like, yay, fire drill. We all get to go out and stand on the playground, know? So that's how we got out of this building. But it was just traumatic. And, there's these scenes where the National Guards, once they're standing there, and these hippie girls are going by and they're putting flowers in the barrels of the guns.
Yeah,
And of course, none of them want to be there. And so it was just, so there was going to be a big confrontation on Memorial Day, and I decided I'd go up to the Sierra Nevadas, get out of town.
Yeah.
So I hitchhiked up to Yosemite National Park.
Yeah.
And I caught a ride with this guy somewhere in the Central Valley, and he was actually going to Yosemite Valley, and I was planning to go up to the high country to Tuolumne Meadows. I had this crazy plan that I was going to hike like 3 or 4 days through the Emigrant Basin Wilderness area, and then I was going to hitchhike down Highway 108 and surprise my parents, who didn't know where I was.
Yeah,
and I probably would have died, because it was like
unprepared. You're just
May in the high Sierras with streams at flood level and all this stuff.
Oh my gosh!
But on the way up to Yosemite, we were on this road near Groveland, California. It's called Priest Grade, and it's this 8-mile grade. Old Priest Grade's only 2 miles. It's really steep, but we're on the new Priest Grade. It's 8 miles. And this guy who picked me up somewhere in the valley, he was like this quiet guy. I said, hey, man, where are you from? Oh, I live in Oakland. And the guy, oh, cool. And I said, oh, what do you do? He's just this guy. He had like kind of longish hair, but he didn't look like a hippie. He looked kind of like an intellectual or something. He says, I'm a chemist. I said, oh, wow. What kind of chemist are you? He says, I make LSD. And I said, oh. He says, in fact, I have I forget how many, 2,000, 5,000 hits of LSD in the back. Yeah. I'm meeting this guy in Yosemite Valley who's going to buy it, like a dealer kind of guy. And I thought oh, that's interesting. And so now we're driving up Priest Grade. We're going around this steep outside left turn with a big cliff on the right side. Yeah. And there's this giant car, like an Oldsmobile 98 or something, screeching on the downhill side, and the brakes had failed on this car. And you could look in the window, and there's this woman who looks terrified, and this car's just heading straight toward us, and we have this head-on collision. And, we're only going 30 miles an hour, so it wasn't like we didn't die, but...
Yeah. I mean, you're here. So.
I didn't, but we didn't have seatbelts in 1969. Oh my so God. I see it coming and I duck, I tuck, I cover my head and tuck. And, law of motion, the law of, the objects in motion tend to stay in motion. So I hit this metal dashboard with the side of my rib cage at 30 miles an hour. Yeah. And I dropped to the floor, and I'm laying there thinking I'm dead. But then I realized, well, if I was dead, I wouldn't be in this pain, so I must be alive, and I wouldn't be thinking these thoughts. So I go, oh, man, and I get out of the car and look at it, and it's obvious nobody's going to drive away. But really, the woman's life was saved, and it maybe in a way mine was too. Yeah. But I start thinking, and so someone comes by, and they're going to go find a highway patrolman because there were no cell phones in 1969. And so I'm thinking, if the police come, they might search the car, and I'm in the car, and I have long hair and look like a hippie, and I thought I should probably mosey on. Yeah. So I get my backpack and I start walking up the road.
Yeah, exactly. Get away from the accident.
So pretty soon some cars come along, and I hitchhike up to Tuolumne Meadows, and I'm going to start my hike, but I'm later than I expected. I got there a little delayed. Yeah. And as soon as I start walking with my heavy backpack, and I'd done a lot of hiking and camping and stuff, every step is painful, and I cracked a rib,
Oh, wow, yeah.
And so it's ow, 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 and I thought okay, bad plan. Mm-hmm. And so I end up, there's these little granite domes that stick up out of this marshy meadow at Tuolumne Meadows. Yeah. It's 8,000 feet or so. And So I think, wow, those are cool. And I climb this one. It has a big rock, big crack in the rock. I climb up the crack, and on the top of the dome is this 2 foot wide, 3 foot wide crack that actually is full of pine needles. Oh, wow. And there's a little pine tree growing at one end of it. And I think man, this would be a cool place. I should sleep up here, because no bear's going to climb up this granite thing and eat me or anything. And so I get all my stuff and bring it up there, and I make some kind of little something to eat. Mm-hmm. And then I'm sitting there and I watch the sunset, and it was I can see all the way to the coast. Wow. And, it's 50 miles of dark evergreen forest, and then there's the foothills, and then you can see in the valley the orchards and fields, different colors, and then you can see the coastal range in the background, and could see Mount Diablo and see Mount Hamilton. Oh, wow. And identify these landmarks. Yeah. And I can see looks kind of foggy where the coast is. So, and it's I can see the curve of the earth. And as the sun's setting, I'm just sitting there watching this. I feel how small I am and how big the earth is. I'm just this little speck on this huge ball. Yeah. And it's kind of awesome. And then it gets dark, and I can see the city, the valley towns start lighting up, Modesto and Stockton. You can see them, and the lights come on in the Bay Area, and you can see like Oakland, San Francisco, and then it gets like really dark, and I'm looking up at the sky, and you can see like crystal clear the Milky Way, and because there's no light pollution.
Exactly.
There.
Yeah.
And it's like now all of a sudden it's like I'm in this transcendent encounter, and I see how big the universe is. Yeah. And how tiny the Earth is in the midst of the universe. So first I'm this tiny speck on this huge planet, and now the planet's a speck in the vastness of the universe. And in that, and I was a heathen, a mocker. I felt the reality of a creator, that behind all this is a God. Yeah. I don't know who he is, but I could feel, I don't know if it was affection, but I felt the presence of this amazing creator who made all this stuff work. Yeah. And, I didn't know Jesus. I mean, I'd heard of Jesus, but I didn't believe in Jesus. But I knew that this God, I could feel love. Like I felt loved. And I thought, you know what? It's going to be okay. I don't know how the Vietnam War is going to end. I don't know. We can't bring John Kennedy or Robert Kennedy or Martin Luther King back. Right. Malcolm X back, all these people that had been assassinated. But I thought, it's going to be okay. Yeah. So I slept there that night. I went home the next morning, hitchhiked, walked in the woods most of that weekend, just kind of contemplating life. Yeah. And when I went back to Berkeley, I was done with radical politics and revolutionary. And so I'd kind of cycled through alcohol, drugs, revolution. And then I went into a season of Eastern religions. And I followed Yogi Bhajan. He was this Kundalini yoga guy, and a few other gurus. But whenever I got close enough to them, they disappointed me. Like I could see kind of like a selfish motive behind how they treated people or what. Yeah. And there's some really funny stories, but I know this is getting like
Dude,
the endless
those are the
podcast.
that I want to hear. That's hilarious. But I mean, it's so you went through this whole kind of spectrum of stuff. Yep. Before where you kind of ended in, you're with your girlfriend at the time. That's your wife, right? Yeah. Now that's
okay. You want to know how I got there?
Yeah. Like okay. So Eastern religion, you're kind of doing the whole thing.
Okay. Help me. Yeah. Because this would be like the 72-hour-long story. But so after another year in Berkeley, I told my parents. I realized my parents should not be paying for what I was putting my life into, because I thought everything they believe in, I believe the opposite. Yeah. And so I told them, look, don't send me any money. I'm just going to make life on my own. My mom had mercy. She sent me $50 a month. But I lived in the flats of Berkeley. Yeah. On a balcony. Yeah. Like I put up a tarp when it rained, and
oh my gosh, like on the actual balcony.
Yeah. I had a nice down sleeping bag, and so I just would camp out and barely had, almost was starving, and I was going to class, but I'm really now interested in these gurus and stuff, and so I keep getting more and more disillusioned, and I finally come to this conclusion. Then they had the lottery in 1969, where instead of everybody at a certain age getting drafted, it was by your birthday, and I got a very high number, and I realized, I could take some time off from college and think about life. So I took a quarter off, worked in Redwood City, realized there's not going to be a revolution tomorrow, because like in Redwood City, everybody's still going to work, Right. Yeah. I was in this little startup electronic company. Yeah. It was all about, like, these were like, this is the kind of people I grew up around, and so then I hitchhiked across America, went to the East Coast, hitchhiked back, went up into Canada. But I just decided, you can't find the truth. I couldn't find the truth in the craziness of Berkeley, because there was always controversy and hubbub going on. Like, our neighbors were Black Panthers, White Panthers, Weathermen, who were like these really radical, like they were radical revolutionaries, that, and it was just like, man,
that's crazy.
Where's the truth? Where's the love? So I got this idea. I said, I'm going to go back up to the Sierras. I'm going to just work out in the woods, do yoga, meditate. And so I did. I went up to the mountains, and I decided not to go back to school for 1 year. And it coincided with my wife, who had been living in kibbutzes in Israel, hitchhiking around Europe.
Oh my gosh.
Because she arrived back at her parents' house in the mountains as kind of just like trying to put her life back together. She had been on the East Coast for a while as well. And so when I knew her since I was 14, and so we started talking one night, and we talked till like sunrise the next morning, sitting on the kitchen floor. It was my 21st birthday, and it was October 17th. It had snowed like 5 inches, which was very unusual. And so as it's getting light, I go running home through the snow, and I'm all happy, like it's a mile away to my parents' house. And so now I'm in love. So now I'm sharing with her my spiritual journey, and we're reading this book, Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And we would read a chapter, and we would do whatever it said, because we're going to get enlightened. I've been working on this for a long time, and we're eating, I have all these bizarre diets that I was really religious about, because it was all a spiritual journey. And there was a prayer that is, he said, ask God to show you your guru, your way, and the teacher who will explain the guru to you. So we did this weird, intense Kundalini yoga thing with hyperventilation and a posture that would put you in this sort of alternate space. And I did it, and you hold your breath, and you go pop out in this space, and I was in this wasteland, I was riding through the desert on a horse with no name, kind of this is really desolate, maybe it was outer darkness or something. And but when we're done, I asked Stan, and what I wanted to see, there was this guru named Swami Satchidananda that had this big beard, and he looked like a lion, and that's what I was kind of hoping to see. And I didn't see anything. And I felt lonely. And so I asked Ann, what did you see? She said, I saw Jesus.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, well, I told her, that's just because you're an American. And she was kind of disappointed and said, oh, okay. So she believed me. I was a false teacher, obviously. But so we spent the rest of that fall and winter reading and doing, and on the winter solstice, I said, hey, if we're still together, let's get married on the summer solstice. And none of our friends were getting married, but she's kind of looked at me funny and thought okay, yeah, maybe. Okay. I don't know. It was just this kind of that's
funny.
And so we would do these things on the vernal equinox. We went up to the top of this mountain because we were going to get enlightened or something, watch the sunrise. And all we did was get cold. It was so cold, March 21st in the high Sierras.
Oh my gosh.
And then, this spring came, and I had worked as a river guide. I'd found this amazing spring, and we found its source on a map, and we figured we'd drive there 15 miles and fill up jugs with water so we could drink pure water, so we could have good karma. And so one day, while all this is going on, we got the water, and we got back to our car, and it started raining, and the electrical system was messed up, and the battery was low, and I said, we're not going to make it back up. It was 15 miles uphill into the mountains. And so we thought, we'll go to our friend's house, this guy that worked on the river, and we drove down in this country road, and we went up on a dirt road to the top of this little mountain, and he wasn't home.
Yeah.
Now we're really bummed out. The car's totally dead, and somehow we made it back down the mountain, coasting it with no power steering working. And we get to the bottom, and it's getting dark.
Yeah.
And we're so bummed out. And we look around, and we see this light. We're on this road. It's called Rawhide Road.
Uh-huh.
And we were on a mountain called Table Mountain. And so we walk to this light.
Yeah.
And it's not a house, it's a little country church, Table Mountain Chapel. And there's like 6 cars or, a couple pickups and a couple cars parked. And we thought, well, someone's here. Let's knock on the door. And this guy comes out, and we're hippies. We have like hair. Of course, Ann had long hair, but I had hair down, over, stuck out past my shoulders, down my back. And I said, hi, we have car trouble. We wondered if we could use your phone to call some friends. And the guy says, well, we don't have a phone, but we'd love to help you.
Yeah.
I thought, well, that's nice. And he's an older guy, looked really like conservative.
Right.
And he said, we're having a Bible study. If you're in a hurry, we can help you right now. But if you're not, would you like to join us?
Yeah.
And we thought, whoa, no, we're not in a hurry, I guess. So I went to my first Bible study. They gave me a King James Bible.
That's awesome.
And I sat there with a bunch of real cowboys, like they're old 50, 60-year-old cowboys with leathery necks and real cowboy boots, guys that branded cattle and stretched fence and stuff. And they're really kind to us. We're sitting there like we're the odd people here.
Oh, yeah.
And they're covering 1 Corinthians 1.
Wow.
And it said, the foolishness of God is wiser than the wisdom of man, and the weakness of God is greater than the might of men. And where's the wise man? Where's the debater of this age? And God uses the foolish things to confound the wise. And as he's reading this stuff, and I had never heard this before. I'm feeling now. I know it's conviction of sin, but this thought runs through my mind like we're a bunch of intellectual snobs that we all think we're smarter than our parents. Like it just like it runs through my mind. And I'm like, what was that?
Yeah.
And then the Bible study's over, and they take us. They charge our battery. They're witnessing to us, and I'm witnessing to them about a lot of my friends quit taking drugs. Now we're all doing yoga and stuff. I'm sure he was discouraged, but he was planting seeds, and so I wanted to pay him back, and he said, no, we just want to bless you. I didn't really know that. I mean, I knew that meant do something good, but it was like foreign language to me. And I go, no, seriously, man, I want to pay you back. Give me your address. And he started laughing. He said, look, if you want to pay me back, just come to church sometime, put it in the offering. That's all. That would be great. So as we're driving back up to the mountain, I say to Ann, we have to go to church. She goes, why? Because she's not there while this little conversation's going on. Uh-huh. And I said, karma. I want to have good karma. These people helped us. I want to do something good for them. And she goes, oh, okay. So now I have to find a church that has a meeting at night because I worked on the weekends as a river guide, every weekend and a lot of days. But so we find this little church in our hometown called Chapel in the Pines, and they have a Sunday night meeting, and we go there, and they didn't take an offering, and it's real small, and of course we have no idea. They all know each other, and they know that we're like, it's an unusual thing that these 2 barefooted hippies walk up and sit in the front row.
Yeah.
Because I'd been to yoga lectures, and you just you want to be up by the front so you can understand this guy with this heavy accent.
Right.
And so they gave testimonies of encounters they'd had with God that night. It was just like, that's what it wasn't like a normal church meeting.
Yeah.
And I'm in awe because I'm thinking, man, I've been starving to death, eating weird food, standing on my head for 6 years trying to encounter the supernatural divine. And these people, some of them had seen Jesus, and some of them had had angelic visitations. One person had been taken to heaven, and it's real. They're talking about it and they're crying. And these are little old ladies and normal working men, middle-aged, 40, 50 years old. And I'm thinking wow.
Oh my goodness.
So we leave, And we leave the meeting. They didn't take the offering, and we walk across the street to our purple Volkswagen bus.
Yeah.
And this youth pastor comes walking across, and he was going to tell us to, quit sinning and give our lives to Jesus. But when he
sounds like
there,
a normal youth pastor right there.
he looked in the window and he said, and he was like a cowboy,
Right.
and we're hippies, and he says, "Hey, you beautiful people, why don't you come to this meeting that's on a weeknight, a bunch of young people that just met Jesus, a lot of people just like you. I think you'll really relate to it." So we're driving home. I mean, he'd been really nice to us.
Yeah.
And if he hadn't accepted us, we probably would have been forget it. This was a really bad idea.
Yeah.
But we thought, hey, why don't we try that meeting? Because maybe they'll have an offering there.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't uncomfortable going to this church meeting. And so we came back on the night for the night meeting a few nights later, and there's 70, 80 kids crammed into a living room, sitting on the floor, a few of them playing guitars. They were good musicians, singing these simple scripture songs that were easy to pick up and sing. So we're singing along, and I'm humming the Jesus lines because I don't think Jesus is God. I think he's just like this great man, and I don't want to have bad karma, be a hypocrite. And so, but all the God songs I'm singing with all my heart, because I had that encounter on the mountain. I totally believe there's a God, and I would argue with my roommate was an atheist, and I go, no, I know there's a God, I know he's everywhere. He's in nature. It's like, and I was a bit of a nature worshiper, but I was worshiping God behind the nature, the cause of the nature. And so, they didn't take an offering.
Oh, no.
But we liked the meeting. After a while we forgot it. We got hooked on the feeling, it was like we're trying to I'm trying to get other people to go to this meeting, say, man, it is the best natural high you've ever felt. Don't worry, you don't have to be a Jesus freak. I'll never be a Jesus freak,
Yeah.
And not true. But but we kept going back, and these really funny things happened because, they were practicing to be in this parade, so we're marching down the street in my hometown, singing this chorus, "Lift Jesus higher, lift Jesus higher, lift him up for the world to see. He said, if I be lifted up from the earth, I'll draw him unto me." So I'm humming all the Jesus parts, and we're walking in this group of Jesus freaks because, we didn't know we just went to the meeting, and they said, tonight we're going to practice for the parade at the Mother Lode Roundup. And they won the award that year. But we're walking down the street in my hometown, and I look, there's these guys up on a deck of a house barbecuing and having some beers, and they see me, and they say, "Charlie, what are you doing with all those Jesus freaks?" Like they yell it out. And I just look at them and shrug my shoulders like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm in the Jesus parade.
Yeah.
And so, but after about 3 weeks, we saw healings and heard amazing testimonies, and I knew, actually, I had Christians pray for me and been healed.
Yeah.
But that didn't convert me. I just thought, hey, that's cool.
Yeah.
Man, I just believe in all kinds of supernatural stuff,
Totally. Yeah.
Krishna could heal me, Buddha could heal me, Jesus could heal me. I'm open,
Yeah.
But what we saw was this joy, happiness, love that I hadn't seen in any other community. And it's hard to find words for it, It's like the presence of this supernatural love that's there in very ordinary people, very imperfect people.
Yeah.
And whereas, when I would see the imperfections in these, swamis and yogis, and one guy we went to see, he was supposed to be an avatar, so I thought, man, I'm going to see God today. He was so weird and selfish. And later, in India, he got arrested for weird things that he did in his ashram there, but I'm around all these obviously imperfect kids. Some of them are a lot of them, they were like drug addicts, and they were educated and uneducated people. They were fairly well off people, really dirt poor people, and there wasn't anything offensive about that.
Wow.
I could feel it was like grace, I guess, So we're singing these songs. We're prophesying to ourselves, you know. We actually, like one, this is before we in these first 3 weeks, this one stuck in our memories. It's from Isaiah. And the words we're driving along in our Volkswagen bus that had no sound system because we didn't have any money. So we would sing.
Yeah.
When we went on road trips, we're singing, and we're singing, seek ye the Lord while he may be found. Wow. Call ye upon him while he's near. Let the wicked forsake his ways, and the unrighteous man his thoughts, and let him return unto the Lord. For he will have mercy upon him, and he will abundantly pardon. And, you know, we like the tune. We just like the tune. It was real sweet, and we just... I mean, like for an hour, we're singing this song. You know, we're prophesying to ourselves, and we don't even
have not like had a formal accepting Jesus type of a moment at all.
Oh no,
like, you're just like
no, not at all. In fact, I mean, actually, there was one meeting where the guy said, "Hey, there's a lot of new people here. Why don't you get to know 2 or 3 people? Ask them how long they've been saved and how you know." And so these people would come up to me and say, "Hey, hey, I'm so and so, and how long have you been saved?" And I think from being a river guide, I had pretty good people skills. And I'd say like, "Oh man, I'm so glad to meet you. Tell me how you met Jesus." You know,
oh my gosh,
and I
totally like not
I would just
answer.
deflect it, and but it was awkward, you know. And of course, they're like happy to tell the story, so they're like, so I'm hearing these salvation stories, but there was one girl, and she kept saying, "But I mean, how long have you been saved?"
She wouldn't let you.
She wouldn't let up. And she's like this little girl, and she's poking her finger in my chest by about the third time I tried to deflect it. And so finally I'm cornered, and I said, "Well, I don't really think I need to get saved. I mean, I really love all you people and what's going on, but I've got my own path to God." And I mean, and when I said that in the midst of like 50 or 70, like it was a private conversation, but
everyone zeroes in.
Yeah. It's like suddenly like, I'm like the honey, and they're like the bees or something. And the leader saw this happening, and he said, "Oh, hey, let's sit down." And fortunately, we were in a corner where there was no door. If there had been a door, we probably would have left.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like it. No, it wasn't very intense, but it could have gotten intense.
Right. Yeah.
And because she's given me the scriptures, and, and I'm just going, "Well, hey, I'm glad that works for you. All the good New Age answers I'm giving." And I liked them all. I wasn't there to cause trouble. I was hungry.
Yeah.
And thirsty. And so we start worshiping again, and man, I just loved it. And I didn't know what it was. It was the presence of God. But sometimes we'd stand up, and I noticed if I got close to the leader, the worship leader, I just thought he was like the song leader or so whatever.
Yeah.
That the feeling got thicker, so I'd try to get close to because I could feel it. And then sometimes they'd all start singing in tongues, and I thought they were like ancient Hebrew mantras or something. So because I'd learned all these mantras. Yeah. And so I would just sing all these like shalaba kind of, singing in the spirit before I'm a Christian, so and
copying like the words you're hearing around you.
Yeah, I'm just figuring, okay, this must be a mantra, and I'm actually trying to remember the words so I can say it like when I'm alone, you know. But I could never quite get there on my own, and so anyway, this goes on for about 3 weeks, and 1 week, Anne's in San Francisco. We had gone to San Francisco the week before, and these Christian musicians in the financial district were playing music, and we were drawn to the music, like almost supernaturally, like from 2 or 3 blocks away in the financial district. And it's a guy with a 12-string guitar and a guy with a tambourine. Yeah. But we heard it blocks away. Like it sounded like Peter, Paul, and Mary. And we're like, wow, it's beautiful. Let's go to the music. You know? So we're being drawn to the music. We get there, and we get in the front, and we realize, oh, these guys are Jesus freaks, like because they're singing Jesus songs. Yeah. And I thought, okay, I should probably and then they're busking, and they've got their guitar cases open, and people are throwing in money, and I can tell they're kind of winding down, And I'm thinking, like, this is probably a good time to leave. And I can't leave. There's like somebody behind me or something that I can't. And I'm right in the front. And they say, hey, the Lord told us to come down here from Portland or wherever they were from up in the Northwest. And we share the good news, and we brought this newspaper that kind of tells some of the stuff that's been happening. And if you guys would buy one, it would sure help us out. They're 25 cents. We'd need gas money to drive back up to Portland.
Yeah.
And so the guy looks at me and says, would you like one? I said, I'd like one. I was just being polite. I didn't think I wanted one. But I was a good Californian, right? Like, yeah, man, I'd like one, but I don't have any change. I've just got a $20 bill, which was true.
Yeah.
I said, when we get some change, we'll come back and I'll buy one. And he looks me in the eye and he says, I feel like the Lord wants me to give you this paper, but promise me you'll read it. And I said, okay, man. And he gives me the paper. And now I am bound by karma that I have to read this paper, And so we go back to the mountains. We were buying wedding rings.
Oh, wow.
And we actually bought our wedding rings for $10 at a jeweler in the financial district. He was sending them to the smelter. They were like incomplete, discontinued sets. And he said, how much money do you kids have? I said, we have $50,
Yeah.
And he kind of I think he probably thought, you crazy hippies.
Yeah.
And he said, I tell you what, I've got these incomplete sets. If you find something you like, I'll give them to you for $10 each. So we got them. I'm 45 years.
That's the ring you have on now. Oh my
ring.
Gosh.
And,
that's wild.
And so we go back to the mountains, and now this paper is plaguing me. I've got it on the back of the toilet. It's like, okay, and I keep thinking, I have to read this so I can throw it away.
Yeah.
But it's like I can't relate to it. There's this big article, and it's a homemade newspaper, really poorly printed.
Yeah.
And it's like Ezekiel 38, Gog and Magog,
Oh my
gosh. 2 pages of Bible study and this
not what you're going to
mention of meetings that I can't, I don't know what this festival is or something. And so one day Anne's at her mom's house in San Francisco, and I'm like looking through, desperate, and I think, I got to find something here I can read. And there was a little article, Jesus, pot, and I don't know, yoga or something, or brown rice. Jesus, pot and brown rice. And I thought, oh, this is my world. So I think I'm going to read this thing, and then I'll throw it away.
Yeah.
And I read it, and it's like my cosmic twin, This couple lived in Seattle. They're trying to find truth. Too many riots. University of Washington. They're in the University District.
Wow.
And they think nobody can find the truth here.
Yeah.
We need to go to the mountains. I mean, there were like quotes, things I had said, things I had thought.
Oh, my gosh.
So they moved to the east slope of the Cascades, and they opened a little macrobiotic restaurant. And I'd been doing this macrobiotic brown rice diet for like 2 or 3 years because I read that it would make you enlightened,
Right.
So they open a macrobiotic restaurant, check,
Yeah.
They're doing yoga, check. And they start reading Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, check. And they pray the prayer, God, show us our guru, and send us a teacher who will explain the guru, the way to us, check. And then, within a few days, this Christian starts coming into their restaurant every day, orders a wooden bowl of brown rice, which he eats with chopsticks, and reads his Bible while he's eating his rice.
Yeah.
And after the third day in a row, they go, this is the teacher that was sent to explain the way, the guru to us.
Yeah.
So they go to him, they tell him the story. They're smarter than I was. They didn't say, oh, well, he's an American. So
Right.
And they said, we think God sent you to us.
Yeah.
To show us the guru, the way.
Yeah.
Who are you? And so he leads them to the Lord.
Wow.
And then they have a little, a paragraph or two of how their life changed because it happened, a year earlier or something.
Right.
And at that point, I thought, I am so closed-minded. I think I'm so open-minded. but I'm so close-minded. So there was this little sinner's prayer at the end of the article.
Yeah.
So I go out into the main part of the house. No one's home. I look around, because I've sworn I'll never become a Jesus freak. And I get down on this yoga mat and I read the sinner's prayer, Dear Heavenly Father, I believe Jesus, you sent Jesus to be my Savior. I'm a sinner, whatever it said. Yeah. And I'm reading it word for word. I don't know how this works. Is it like a mantra? Like if you don't get the words just right, it doesn't work.
Totally.
And so it's the vibration,
I was going to say you have to do the right tempo.
Yeah. In the guru voice. And but anyway, so I pray this prayer, and then after I pray that prayer, I pray an authentic prayer.
Yeah.
And I say, Jesus, I've tried so many things, and I've never tried you. I don't know why.
Yeah.
If you'll show me you're real, I'll follow you the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I felt like this solemnity, just like,
yeah.
But no lightning bolts, nothing like I was instantly doing
totally
somersaults. I was just kind of saying I was a sinner because it said it in the sinner's prayer. So I called Ann at her mom's house, and she had made a very similar transaction with the Lord that very day. So we were kind of in awe of that,
Oh my gosh.
She said, Jesus, I don't know. We're going to these Christian meetings. I'll try being a Christian for 6 months. I'll do all the Christian stuff.
Yeah.
And if it works, I'm good. I mean, it was just kind of this, like we're doing Jesus on trial,
Yeah.
And so we were in awe that we both had this happen.
Yeah.
The next meeting we went to, we were going to sing Jesus. This is...
You're going to now use his name.
Yeah, we've repented of that one thing,
Yeah.
And so we come to this line where and it says, Jesus, my Jesus, and we sing it.
Yeah.
Jesus,
Yeah.
And when we did, it was like warm oil poured. It happened to both of us, warm oil.
Oh, my goodness.
From our fingertips
over
our heads down to our feet, and we were done. We were just like, it was like the first thing that had ever happened to us that was an encounter initiated by God. It wasn't something that we fasted, we did this extreme diet, we did this, certain yoga, puja, meditation thing. And I'm not mocking any of that, but it's like we hadn't changed much at all.
Yeah.
We were like living in sin and being, still everything was, our thought patterns, our political and cultural views were totally untouched. But we had opened ourselves up. Jesus, will you show us you're real?
Yeah.
And he poured this tangible affection out on us. Unconditional, unearned. And, I didn't have language for it. I just knew he was real. And like within a week, like my vocabulary changed. I lost a lot of words that I frequently used that I never use anymore, that are quite prominent in our culture right now. And the F word disappeared from my vocabulary without any effort. Nobody, and I just changed. Yeah. And I didn't want to hang out with my friends and smoke dope, or I wasn't doing it for a party thing. It was just like social,
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to do what I'd been doing. It seemed pointless, and I just wanted to be in these meetings where where that tangible presence of God was, and started, got a Bible. We actually had this Bible from the Jehovah's Witnesses. And then we had a King James Bible, but we couldn't understand the King James Bible, so we'd read it, because that's what all the kids were using then.
Yeah.
We'd read the King James Bible, then we'd read this little green Bible from the Jehovah's Witnesses to find out what it meant, and so
that's not the recommended method these days, though.
Right. And so they, after a few weeks, like I told the leader, like, hey, we we prayed
Yeah.
and asked Jesus to show us Israel. I told him what had happened.
Yeah.
He said, "That's awesome. Do you have a Bible?" And I said, "Yeah, we have this little green Bible called the New World Translation." And he looks, he's kind of horrified.
Yeah.
And because it's a faulty translation that is non-Trinitarian.
Yeah.
And he says, "Look, let me give you this Bible. You just have this, and it's great. And you can, because I told him we're reading the King James, but we can't understand. He gave us an amplified Bible.
Oh, wow.
And so we spent that summer reading the Gospel of John and the Book of Romans out loud from the Amplified Bible, like every single bracket, parentheses, expansion, and stuff. And we were like changing our mind, and we got these navigator cards.
Yeah.
And on our days off from the river, we'd go down to the river because we lived in this house with no air conditioning, and it was so hot in the foothills of, like 100 degrees. One day it was 108 degrees inside our house.
Oh my gosh.
After we got married, we looked for the cheapest place possible. It was near the river, and it was down in this place called Shaw's Flat, and these little horrible apartments. It was kind of a glorified motel turned into apartments. No air conditioning. One day inside our apartment was 108 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
It had a clawfoot bathtub, and we'd fill it up with cold water.
Yeah.
And when we would get like heat
Dizziness,
stroke or whatever,
yeah.
we'd immerse ourselves in this cold water up to our chins and wait until our bodies cooled off. So in the daytime, we would go down to the river if we weren't working on the river, and we would sit in this ice cold water and memorize scriptures.
I just realized the time. No, I've totally lost track of time.
Oh, well, me too.
I don't want to cut you off right now, but it's I just realized what time it is. We have to get downstairs.
Okay. So you want to wrap it up?
Yeah.
So there's my story.
I have all these other crazy questions because you go from this point. We can't go there now, but you go from this point to becoming a pastor.
Yeah.
You get invited back. Just recently, you're at Google at an event held at the Googleplex. With a bunch of other crazy believers, and it's like you're describing your own personal journey, and it's like God's doing that stuff right now. And
totally,
if people want to hear more from you or your story or get in touch with you, what would be the best way that they can do that?
Well, the best way, we have a website. The name of our ministry, we're now in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where I thought I'd never be, but it's actually this totally awesome place where God's doing all these great things. People are moving there from all over the world.
Wow.
It's called Life Center Ministries International. There's a website, lcmi.org. Okay. There's a few other websites, but I don't know them all.
Yeah.
And we've got videos and podcasts and all that stuff there. Media, books that have been written by different people that are part of our team.
Yeah.
And I've written a book and part of another book, and we're working on a few more books. But the book that actually gives that testimony is called Glow in the Dark.
Glow in the Dark. Okay.
Glow in the Dark. You can get it on our website. It's on Amazon. It's on Kindle. And it's a great... It's a story of, this New Age, unchurched California kid. We became we were authentic flower children. Just peace and love. Was the goal of our lives, and we believed in it in kind of a utopian way.
Yeah,
and it was really God was in all those dreams. That vision that there can be a world of peace and love is really found in Jesus Christ.
Right,
and all the rest of our efforts end up often being futility.
Yeah.
So
that's it's honestly so amazing. Next time you're out here, we need to do this again because there's so I'm right now just fighting the time because there's just some other really crazy questions that it just has really stirred up for my own personal journey that I'd love to hear from you about. But so lcmi.org.
Yeah.
And I'll put this stuff in the show notes too.
Okay.
So people can, they're not worried trying to rewind it and listen to it. Thank you so much, Charles. Do you want to just pray for our listeners?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think what changes lives faster and more than anything else, it is having an encounter with God's personal love for each person. And so I just want to pray for that, because so many Christians had witnessed to us and debated with us. And Berkeley in those days, there were so many ministries reaching out to kids like me. And for me, the debate system never worked,
Yeah.
And in fact, I'd be kind of put off by it, felt manipulated by it. But when I got by, God played chess with me and he won.
Yeah.
He knew how to get me into his presence, which, that going to those meetings so I could put $2 in the offering saved our souls. I mean, it really brought us into freedom. And it was an encounter with his presence. So I just want to pray for anyone listening that, if you're discouraged that you've shared the gospel with people and you didn't think it was effective, well, all those people shared the gospel with me, and at the moment it didn't seem effective, but they had planted seeds, and it was. And so I just pray, Father, that you would encourage everyone listening to this broadcast, that you are accessible and available. I pray that for everyone who's seeking a fresh encounter with the Holy Spirit, would you come and release breakthrough and hope and expectation and trust in your goodness.
Yeah.
In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Charles. Pastor Charles Stock. Wow. Thank you. Go check him out, social media, and the Church Life Center in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And be sure to follow me and my wife, Dustin Savannah, on Instagram, Dustin Box, Twitter, DustinBox_BJJ as well on Instagram. And our website, of course, DustinandSavannah.com. Savannah's blog is up, has amazing content, and that link is right there on the main page. And stay tuned, more podcasts on the way. See you next time.